Hey everyone, welcome back to Tuesday Tea with me, Alisha Bowker Mudrock. Today I have a dear friend and colleague, Victoria, on with us. She is going to geek out some more just about Pilates, all things Pilates, how much we love it, the benefits, etc. But I'm just so excited that she's here. And before we get started on the conversation, I'm going to let her sort of introduce herself, let you guys know who she is, where she's coming from, and then we'll dive in. So welcome, Victoria. So glad you're here.
Hi, thank you. So I'm Victoria. I am a PTA and I started Pilates. I guess I got my certification in 2023. So I'm very baby Pilates instructor. I just started. And so my background is very more therapy based than
Mm-hmm.
Pilates based. So
Mm-hmm.
that's where Pilates kind of came in for me.
Yeah, and so PTA, physical therapy
Assistant, yeah.
assistant aide, okay. And I think that just from some of our other guests, it's interesting because that like that profession or that overlap just keeps coming up. That a lot of overlap between like physical therapy as a profession. My dad was one. I'm familiar with the background as well. But just that healing modality and like Joseph Pilates starting out with rehabilitating dancers, and while they are definitely separate and you do need to be like you're doctored and it's like it is a different career path. I just
Right.
feel like it's so beautiful, the overlap and just how pervasive the principles of Pilates feeds into other elements of a practice as well, right? Like not just fitness, but how it can be really reparative and restorative as
Right.
well. So
Definitely. There's a rehab like side of Pilates that like after learning Pilates, I've been able to take to my own patients and seen a lot of results
mm,
because that overlap is like he was doing rehab essentially. He was doing physical
yeah,
therapy.
yeah,
Of course, I'm sure he wasn't all hands on like we are doing adjustments and whatnot, but
right, right. Not taking x-rays per se. Who knows? Maybe, but probably not.
who knows what was going on back then, especially in that time.
Right, right.
But it's very therapeutic. And how I actually got introduced to Pilates, I was taking a CEU course. So as a therapist, you have to you have to have those CEUs every year. I took a CEU course that was taught by a Pilates instructor slash physical therapist. And
Mm-hmm.
he brought in a lot of the Pilates principles, and I was like, "Whoa, what is this? Is completely different. This is not what we learned in school. Like it
Right,
was, but it wasn't the way it
right,
was
right,
applied."
right.
I was intrigued. And that's where I kind of saw the overlap. And I'm like, this is like, I always thought, Pilates, I thought you look at it as like okay, that's the Pilates moms or whatever, or like,
Right. Or like the Pilates girls, or like they're just in cute leggings and drinking out of
exactly.
water bottles. Like not we do it, so we're not diminishing. But yeah, you think of this very stereotypical thing where it's like, no, it's so much deeper than that.
Oh, it's so much deeper. And the connection you feel, and then finding that awareness in your body, which
Mm,
we try to teach in physical therapy. We do like tactile cues, which in Pilates, it's little, you do apply tactile, but you do teach that differently to get down into the awareness versus just like going to a gym and throwing around a bunch of weights to not even knowing
yes.
what you're there for.
Yes. And I think it's interesting too. Obviously, you have to have more of a background in anatomy, so you know probably a lot of the words and how everything's put together. But I think it's been fascinating on the just being a student of Pilates, and then going into the teaching side, how even as a student, how much more aware I became of how my anatomy worked. Maybe I didn't know what like that muscle name was or whatever else, but
Right.
just understanding like just because I have a pain here doesn't mean it's just my wrist. This could be coming from my ear or my shoulder or like my foot, right? Because all of our muscles and tendons and fascia is like
It's
all
it's
connected.
all connected, yeah, and it all works together as one. And
Mm-hmm.
what Pilates teaches you, if you do it correctly, of course.
Right, right. That you're one unit moving, not pieces of a unit, right?
You hear
Hi,
dogs.
dogs. Yeah, those are our friends. You're
Yes,
good.
my dogs. I have music playing. Hopefully they go away.
They're fine. We love guests, even if it's just the voices. Um, what do you think has been one of the? Do you have like a cool story or aha moment or I don't know, benefit from getting into like the Pilates practice, something that's like changed something or something you've seen that
For
stuck
my
with you?
Definitely for myself, I've seen, because of course I being a physical therapist, like I knew how to work the body, but I don't know how, like if for some reason it did click more, just like core engagement versus before
Mm,
I was so rounded in my shoulders. I didn't realize
mm,
how bad my posture was. I didn't realize I was so quad dominant over like core dominant. I was
mm,
very upper trap dominant. And like I was like, yeah, I knew I was working my abs and I could feel them, but I didn't know how much I was compensating and
mm.
hurting myself in the end. And it was amazing how like just the first class, I'm like, oh, that duh.
You're like, I know that, but I didn't like know that. Yeah.
And it is. And like even people that, because I do privates with people that are like higher up, they've done Pilates for years. I'll kind of go in and they're like, oh, that's different. That's what I'm, because
Mhm.
it is, I feel like it's almost like you learn as you grow.
Yeah.
And as you get stronger, I always say this, like as you get stronger, I always say bring it back to the basics. You got to go back to that because you get stronger. Sure, you're going to perform a teaser, but are you doing it properly? Are you using momentum?
Right. 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 No, it's so true. I think this has been a theme that's come up a lot too, but personally comes up in my practice, and I'm sure you see it with students or yourself. But every day your body is different, right? Like Victoria's one of my teachers. She's great. And I feel like I was in a class last week and I felt like just a piece of shit. Like I'm like, do I even know what I'm doing? Like nothing was working, everything was hard, right? And like, I don't know, maybe it's because I've been after the weekend, it was just a specific day. But that that day was like I felt like a brand new Pilates student on some level versus a class this morning. And I was like, oh, I felt good. And so it's not about judgment. It's just I have that awareness of what my body generally feels like and when it's outside of that. But it's just meeting yourself where you're at and doing what you need to do, right? Like maybe I need to do less that day, or it was more about just connection or control because for whatever reason I was feeling stiff and my spine was like operating in two parts instead of a million little vertebrae. So I think it's just such a inclusive movement practice because it really encourages us to meet ourselves where we're at each day. It's not always linear, right? It's pretty fluid with how we show up and I'm sure you see it with clients too, and your classes are individual, maybe even as well.
Yeah, I see it every day because I see people and I'm like, oh, what's going on? You're doing this with your pelvis.
Mm-hmm.
They're like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, well, I did this weekend, and it's crazy because just what you do in your own spare time will influence how your body is. Like right now, I'm sitting on the floor, probably going to get a little tight in my back and shoulders because I don't have great posture on the floor, and I will
Yeah.
see that, and I will have
Yeah.
to adjust back to it. So your life you always need to do Pilates because your life is going to try to pull you out of it. Sitting for long periods of time at the computer, you're going to be
Yes.
rounded.
Yeah.
So that is, yeah, your body's going to be different every day. So keeping that consistency will definitely, you'll not just find better in your practice and you'll find more awareness, but you will then see how bad things in your life can affect your body if you don't get a control of it now. You're going to
Feel
really,
it later.
yeah, you'll feel it later.
It kind of reminds me too of this like epidemic of stagnation that we're in, right? That the thing killing people the most is just that no one's moving.
Yeah,
They're
there is.
all we're sitting and we're sitting in chairs that aren't built right
Mhm.
for our bodies. Like we're not meant to be like this reclined, right? Like
Yeah,
we should be up more upright. It's not as comfortable, but it's better for us. We shouldn't be sitting for as long a period of time. The phone, even driving planes, like we used to be hunters and gatherers and walking, like our bodies were created to do more than how we live in the 21st century, especially in more Western America, right? So I think it is that good reminder that the more we're showing up, even if it is not like the optimal balance, but the more we can show up and just bring that awareness. And even as I sit all day, like remembering to fix my posture and things, it's setting us up for longevity and success.
yeah,
So we can still be like moving and thriving when we're 90, not
right.
confined and limited and in pain. So I don't think we have to be as sick and as in pain as we are as a country, you know?
Yeah, it's pretty bad. And but I've seen look here lately, we've getting more and more people coming in. My last private, he was in his 70s.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's you. They're starting to realize, like, oh my gosh, my body is deteriorating. Now, it would be nice if they would have learned it earlier, but we can modify. We can find a way to get their body moving in their range, and then
Yes.
maybe even expand on that if they can.
Yes. I think that's a great reminder too. You're never too old to start. So
Exactly.
just because you haven't been doing it doesn't mean you shouldn't start doing it
Exactly.
now.
For sure.
What do you think are some like manageable ways to like practice Pilates on a daily basis or like if we can't get to a class all the time,
Mhm.
what might be some suggestions you have of like little things or some movements or ways in which people can sort of incorporate that into their lifestyle? If it can't always be at a studio 4 times a week, let's say.
Just if you're able to get down on the floor or on a mat, I always say, let's get you moving. Let's get that pelvis rocking. Let's get that ribs
Mm-hmm.
down. Let's try to get our body moving,
Mm-hmm.
moving into some sort of like, I mean, a bridge. You can, if you can't get on the floor, try to do it on your bed or try to get some sort of engagement of that posterior chain, trying to get like some sort of hip extension, trying to get
Mm,
mobility through there, engaging those glutes. So I have a lot of my, this is more patience than my Pilates practice, but I have them do a lot of like some of the moves I've taught them, the bridge, little things like even like pelvic rocking and then maybe some imprint, marching, hip marching, if
mm,
they're strong enough, like half rollbacks just on the mat, just to get them aware of their body. And then once they're
mm-hmm.
aware of their body, they'll find that they engage it throughout the day.
Today.
They'll find
Mm-hmm.
that like, oh, I'm using my core. So you're essentially, yeah, you're out for a walk, you're golfing, you're engaging though, your shoulders are down,
Mm,
your abdomen
mm-hmm.
all you're actually walking on with your glutes, you're walking with your core in, you're not dumping that pelvis, you're not pulling it
Mm.
back. So I anytime you like every day doing something like that, just to get that body aware. That's Pilates, getting that body
Yeah.
aware of what you're doing.
Yeah. Yeah. And living in that awareness, right? Like that, that mind body connection. And I think something else we talked about the couple last few weeks too of that idea of the minute you're sort of out of it mentally, are you really doing Pilates anymore, right? Like you're doing fitness, but like, are you doing the movement that Joseph Pilates sort of created? And I think that's where this extends beyond just like the workout. And that's why you don't necessarily have to show up to the workout class to be doing it or to be living that more lifestyle. But like you're saying, when you're golfing, when you're driving, when you're cooking, when you're picking up your kid, your grandkid, when you're making your bed, whatever else, vacuuming, sweeping, that we're aware of, we're having that conversation with our body about like what it's needing, what it's feeling, how I'm using it. And we just all live on such autopilot. And I think that it's not a hard thing, but it's not a common thing for us to do, to be that
Oh,
connected or aware of
oh,
ourselves, right?
100%. I have patients, I call it like glute and ab amnesia, where they literally,
You
I could,
forget.
yeah, they have no idea. They're pulling in their quads, they're pulling in their hip flexors. I'm having them do something like they have no idea. They're moving somewhere else. They're absolutely
Mm,
engaging anything. And we see it a lot in therapy too, where they don't know where they're working. And that translates into
mm.
everyday life
Right,
and
right.
they pull in different areas and they completely have they've like lost the connection to their glutes or lost the connection to their abs and something else is working that, which is of course leading to injury.
Right, because something else is overcompensating if that main muscle is supposed to be doing it. It's not. Something else is working too hard, essentially, or working out of its lane, maybe even.
Oh yeah,
So,
which happens a lot in your body because I used to work in peds and those kids they had all kinds of different things going on, but they would move like they would
they
run.
knew.
They
Yes,
knew their body would move. Now we're
yes,
doing it properly. No,
right,
they were hurting themselves or they were compensating all over the place. Pete
right.
was one of the biggest examples of like you will move your body if you have to,
Yeah,
but are you doing it to what the muscle was intended to be for?
right, right. And it's such a beautiful thing too. As a kid, you're like learning. They don't know, we don't know. And then you imagine you add the medical components, and I'm sure there's other elements of why or how. But it is so fun to watch kids though, and like their dexterity, their flexibility, their abilities that we do lose for lots of reasons as we age. But I think too, a lot of what like Joseph looked at animals and young children, right? Of like how our bodies just naturally want to move. And
Right.
then the boxes we sort of stuff them into. And it's great to like train them at a younger age of how to best support that growth. But I think it can be so freeing probably to watch little kids just wobbling about because it does remind us just of how versatile and like expressive our bodies can be. And I think we're so rigid as adults, so creatively, literally, physically, and otherwise, but we lose so much of that freedom the older we get for a lot of reasons, you know.
Usually pain.
Yes, pain. You're not allowed, you look weird. You're not allowed to be, you know, just like society stuff too, for better and for worse. Another another thing I've tried to think about too is like our ankles and our feet are so important, right? Especially as that's the foundation of like our whole self.
Right.
And someone once was talking about how if you have to take elevators a lot, this be more if you like if you live in apartments or work in place, or you're standing just in place a lot, is doing like footwork just while
Yeah.
standing because that helps with that like ankle flexion and like stability and strength. It's helping wake up your feet and your toes and really thinking about it as
Doing like
a
a
whole
toast
unit.
if you have the
Mm-hmm.
allow it.
Mm-hmm.
Try because we do lose that. Like an example today in my class that was more of a stretchy class.
Mm-hmm.
I did some toe splaying on the foot bar. Those toes were not moving. Everyone like, oh, okay, we got to work on that because you
Yeah.
need your toes. That is how your foot articulates. You have
Yes.
balance, and
Yes.
as a society, we've lost that completely.
Yes. Especially high heels, shoes that don't fit the natural foot shape, like just not walking enough, right? I mean, I feel like there's this new, well, it's not a new trend because walking is important, but lately I've been seeing a lot of ads for some app that you like say, I want to lose X amount of pounds, and it tells you how many steps you're supposed to take. Like, who knows? It's total bullshit. But I feel like walking's coming back as a new like hot thing to do, which is great. But even when you're doing something like walking, like you said, it's so important to be aware of what our whole body is doing while walking because
Right.
we can still hurt ourselves or like not feel good after walking if we're not walking well, right? Like from the feet up, we have to be thinking of all of what's going on for sure.
Nation, you're gonna hit your knees, your hips, then it's probably gonna
Yeah,
get back or even the pronated foot.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. And that is something people just go and they're not like they're walking, their hips are doing one thing, their hips are dropping, they don't have as much extension on one leg versus the other. It is, but that's part of like people are just trying to get going
yeah,
and they don't
yeah,
realize that
yeah.
that's causing pain, that's causing an injury, which could be corrected. Just gotta
Right.
be
But we have to
mindful.
be aware of it first. So I
Right.
think it sounds like that's the first step. Like, how can folks just really double down on being more aware of what's happening in their bodies and how they're moving their body at any given time? Because it's not about like just like judgment, like we're saying, because no, we're not all even. Like I definitely do something funky on this side, or this hip's tighter, or this is whatever. Like that's just my body. But the more aware I am of supporting those spaces or not overcorrecting or overcompensating or like settling into the thing that like I have a calf injury from before. So I notice that other muscles like to take over a lot if I'm doing something that the calf is afraid it will get hurt again. It's healed, it's fine, but like we don't want to hurt. So I
Right.
can tell I have to think harder about my right leg in a different way than my left because my body's trying to keep me safe, right? It's doing what it's doing to a fault. So just that awareness is really important for me to have, right? And we all have our own things like that. So I think just that information can be so valuable. Well, maybe we can do it ourselves, or we could come to folks like you for PT or for Pilates, or Google it or whatever, to get more information on how to start what we can do about it if there's like a bigger problem to fix,
Right.
so to speak.
I mean, you see that a lot, and you will see that with, like you were saying, your injury, and that will translate up your body. And especially,
Mm-hmm.
she's a member at another studio. So she fractured her foot, and she had one of those, like a little lift in her shoe to keep her foot flat from articulating. And she was walking, and I was like, of course, like doing this. I'm like, ooh, okay, so like, how's your body? She's like, it hurts so bad because
Yeah.
because that's not what her body was meant to do. So
Right.
having that awareness, and then we gave her a little lift to kind of even her out, but you will cause injury with that too. So
Mm-hmm.
like your compensation, you are aware of it, being aware of it's good, because you will end up causing other issues down the line.
Yeah.
There's a hockey player that I want to say he fractured his ankle or his foot, and he was playing hurt, compensating, and ended up messing up his back. And now he's
Yeah.
out on injury. He's actually hasn't played all season because of that compensation pattern.
Wow.
Being aware of what your feet, like you're saying, of injuries, being aware of it in your body, going to a physical therapist or a Pilates instructor to get down there and be like, yeah, I have this going on, but I don't want this to happen. I want A to cause B.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And just that reminder of like resting and listening to our body too. Because I bet if he hadn't played and had rested the injury, he could have been out for a bit, but less time. Then now he has a much bigger issue because he fucked up a whole other part of his body because he played on an injury, which again, it's a hockey player. You're not going to tell them to sit down. But like, but I think it is that other idea of like, sometimes it's hard for me to slow down. I don't like feeling like I can't do, but it is remembering if I don't take that space to listen to what I'm needing for the day, they don't really acknowledge that. It can set me up for worse things over time or in the immediate if I'm not respecting or like hearing what my body is also telling me. Because it's communicating to us all the time. We're just not always listening.
And is very aware of me being in here right now.
I was like, Mom.
Theo's fine. He's doing his own thing, but
it's okay. But we're almost done.
Yeah, but it comes back to that awareness, like knowing your body, which is what you learn with Pilates. You learn, oh, my body is not normal today, or not normal. It's normal for you.
It's just feeling weird today, or something's not happening. Mm-hmm.
But another example, my private I had earlier, she came in. She usually has her pelvis a little wonky. And I was like, this is worse than normal. And I'm like, what's going on? So we're going over the list of things, like what she did over the weekend. And then she's like, I got a new mattress. And I'm like, really? And then we all took it back. And she's like, yeah, and I kind of had some pain right here. And I'm like, so that coming back to why your body is, like, you're like finding an awareness. And the reformer is great because it almost like puts you there and you're like, whoa, that shoulder feels different. Or like, being straps is always very humbling because you're like, whoa, those straps are straight. They're even, but my legs
aren't. My don't feel even. Yeah. 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 I love that awareness and actually listening. Like, don't ignore.
Oh my gosh. I have so many people that ignore. And I'm like, I see a face and they're like, I'm pushing through. And I'm like, stop. I have a lady always. And today she was like, yes, Mom. And I'm like,
you're like, oh, fine. I'll be your mom. I'm just helping you out. I love it.
It is. You have to, and awareness and respecting that awareness.
Yeah, yeah, of course. Because there's always that good tension, the good push, but there's like bad pain and then like good pain. And so we just want to be intentional and thoughtful about which one. All right, I'm asking 4 quick questions at the end of the talks this month. So just first thing that comes to mind, they're not hard, but your favorite Pilates move?
Ooh, oh gosh. Here lately, the roll up has been so fun. I love the roll up.
She does love the roll up if you go to one of her classes. A morning or evening workout?
Morning.
What is coffee or tea?
Coffee.
And what would be a word or phrase that you're sort of embodying for 2025?
All right, I cheated. I knew this question was coming because I watched the other two series,
Just
and
for sure.
I thought about it, and it's will. So
Oh.
instead of like I need to, I will.
Ah,
I
I
like
like
putting it
that.
out there. Like I'm not. I need to do this. I'm going. No, I will. It's happening.
Like a lot of intention behind it. I like that. That's awesome. All right. Well, is there any last thought, piece of wisdom, juicy nugget you want to leave folks with?
Get better entertainment toys for your dogs. Apparently, what I have is not helping.
Music they were not here for today. But I think like this idea of awareness, conversations with our body, being intentional. I think you've left us with a lot of really good thoughts. And anything else you want to let folks know about, share, promote?
Not right now. If I'll let you know. You can post about it.
Okay, yeah, and definitely Victoria and I might be doing some collabby stuff in the future, so you'll probably see more of her. But thank you so much for being here today. It was such a beautiful conversation, and I'm hopeful it helped some folks listening. And we'll see you guys next time.